Come on, Livingston, we gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien. Lead! And Livingston have the lead! Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, and proudly sponsored by Strana Apparel. My name's Euan, and today I'm joined by Angus. Angus, how you doing, mate? You've got a bit of good news pre-recording.
Yeah, I got a bit of a spring in my step right now. Just passed my driving test there. God knows how. Thought I'd failed it in the first minute. I was as shocked as anybody when the guy said, "Oh yeah, so you've passed." So yeah, very delighted about that. Very, very happy. Unfortunately, Ewan, though, we have some bad news to be talking about on this episode regarding how we have ended the main campaign. But I'm sure we'll get right into that. As opposed to that, Ewan, what about yourself? Doing all right?
Yeah, all good. Was at a wedding Friday night with my missus, so that was really good. Sadly, Saturday brought me back down to earth with a shuddering halt. And yeah, we'll obviously talk about that. But our women's team managed to pick up spirits a little bit as they edge closer to the league title with a fantastic late win on Sunday. So there is some positive bits to speak about in this podcast, and also a heads up to anyone living in the EH postcode to watch out, especially crossing any roads in the near future when Angus is out and about. But
I hear that Fast and the Furious is coming to West.
What episode are we on? What film are we on now? 47 or something like that. Fast and Furious, is it? As always, you can find this episode as well as all our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick the episode off by discussing our defeat against Dundee United, as despite the result going our way, the Lions missed out on the top six.
Our women's side were in action against Hutchison Vale at the Tony Macaroni Arena and left it late to put the league title within touching distance.
And it's the return of question time as we answer questions from the listeners.
And finally, I caught up with Ross from the County Corner to look ahead to our trip to the Highlands to take on Ross County.
Livy travelled to Tannadice knowing only a win would do to stand any hope of reaching the top six. Despite results going in our favour elsewhere, the Lions would slump to a 2-0 defeat. Ewan, this was just as disappointing as you can get from a performance, right?
I don't know if I'm more disappointed with it this year than I was last year, because last year, if you look at the Motherwell game, see, for 70 minutes, we were excellent. And Motherwell only get back in the game with a hot shot from 30 yards. They'd done nothing in the game and then obviously have that kind of spell at the end. But I felt like the players had left absolutely everything out in the park that day and were dead on their feet, and you couldn't question kind of commitment and effort. But the performance on Saturday was so lacklustre. There was such a lack of tempo about it. It didn't come across as a game that had so much riding on it. And then when you look at the scenario 20 minutes in, everything was going in our favour elsewhere. I know Hibs ended up drawing, but even that would have done for us. St Mirren losing at home to Kilmarnock was probably the biggest surprise out of the games at the weekend. So it was just such a disappointing performance. And first things first, I mean, you can't question Davies' team selection because he picked the same 11 that put in a very, very good performance against St Johnstone the week before. And and won pretty comfortably in the end in that game. So you can't really question that particular selection, but it just didn't click for whatever reason at the weekend. So many players looked really off it and not performing to their best capabilities. Granted, we had a kind of half chance where Nicky Devlin got played in and behind by Bruce Anderson. He's not been able to really get the shot away. And then the first goal comes from Jamie McGrath. I think Jason Holt's dived in when he doesn't need to on Ian Harkes, who's managed to hit the ball to his side to McGrath. He's hit it well, but I kind of question Shamal George. He's got a good hand to it. It's not right in the corner. I get there's a wee bit of dip and a bit of movement on the ball, but would you expect your keeper to be saving that from that distance? I would maybe say so. So probably a little bit of disappointment there with that. Albeit he did come to the rescue shortly after that. Niskanen had a chance at the back post, which he's made a smart save from. Only other sniff that we really had in that opening 45 minutes was a Bruce Anderson header, but that's gone, a good 10, 15 yards wide in the end. And second half, I thought it wasn't hard to be better than we were. Probably slightly better and had a little bit more sustained possession of the ball in spells, but that's clutching at straws. I still think Dundee United were creating the better of the opportunities. Behic had one which he's put across, flashed across the face of goal. Fletcher's had one as well, which he's put over the crossbar. The only real opportunity I can think of for ourselves was Shinnie having a pot shot from 20 yards, which, I don't know why we weren't doing that. Obviously, Andy Winton was on the podcast last week and he's been on previously and he's talked about Birighitti and goals for Dundee United and how prone he is to a clanger. I can't understand why we weren't trying to pepper his goal from just about anywhere. Putting crosses in on top of him, hitting shots from long range, looking at him to spill, because he almost spilt that one. It almost felt to Bruce Anderson to poke into the net. There was another kind of half chance where Morgan Boys had a cut back from a corner, but again, it's not failed to anyone. And then the second goal just kind of sums up our afternoon. Feel for Christian Montano because he was awfully upset after the game. He obviously felt like he was taking a bit of the blame for the result, but he should do better in that situation, and I'm sure he'll know that himself. He's actually done really well to win the ball back from Kai Fotheringham, and then I don't know why he probably hasn't just rolled it back into Shamal George to then go long and deal with the danger, but he's been dispossessed. I have to say, nobody has picked up Stephen Fletcher, but you actually need to credit Fletcher in that sense because it's a striker's instinct. He's almost expected a mistake to happen and he's gambled and he's ran into that space, but nobody's decided to pick up his run, and it's a composed finish from him. But it was just such a lacklustre performance. Nubley, I thought he looked really out of sorts at the weekend. It's the least I've seen him kind of taking on his man in games. He was dropping incredibly deep to get on the ball at times, and to be fair, you need to credit Dundee United to that extent because I thought they were very good at doubling up on him. Anytime we got the ball, there was two players sprinting out to put pressure on him. So you need to give them credit. But I think what makes it more frustrating is I don't even think Dundee United had to be good at the weekend to beat us. That's what made it so disappointing, is that's a team that's been struggling all season. Granted, they've picked up a couple of results recently, hit a little bit of form, probably at the right time for them. But I don't even think they had to do anything special to get a result against us. And it was such a disappointing performance away from home in recent times.
It's obviously very disappointing missing out. In a way, you can accept it if we've went to Tannadice and Dundee United have been excellent. They weren't. We played like we didn't have anything to play for, in all honesty, and that is what's the most frustrating part about that. Zero urgency in that first half. I get what kind of some people were saying is that you obviously don't need to go out for the win straight away. You need to do something, and that first half was pathetic in a lot of ways. There was no desire to get on the ball. There was no ideas to create anything. It was as if it was, let's just try not to do anything. Let's try and keep it up until half time. Then maybe the second half we can try and influence something. We went too safe and did nothing. As you say, going into this game, our most effective attacking players being Joel Nubley may as well have been sitting with us in the stand in the first half because he was not getting into the game whatsoever. I think that's what the most frustrating part about it is as well, is that last game that we played against Dundee United, how good he was, taking on that back line. He never ever once looked like he wanted to go and take the man on. And I know it's obviously this is singling him out for this little bit here, and he's been great the whole season. But he's not the only one. The rest of them as well, just no urgency on the ball, and at the end of the day, the quality wasn't there as well. How many passes were we just giving away like unnecessarily? I think there must have been we're getting into as soon as we got into the final third, just kicking the ball out for throw-ins and stuff like that. Easy passes. See if it's like, trying to do something in the final third that's, it just doesn't come off. Fair enough. This was us building up attacks and that. There were so many times we got the ball and just hit it straight out. I think Devlin had a few on the right-hand side. Holt had one, he gets the ball and he tries to clip in a cross and just goes straight into the stand. And the fans were justifiably getting frustrated at this because the quality was non-existent. And yeah, as you say, Dundee United were just very compact and they didn't have to do anything special because we were just, tripping ourselves up. It wasn't as if, on another day, maybe we would have had a couple better chances. But as you say as well, it's been well documented that their goalkeeper has been one of the poorest this season. We came away from a game that we needed to win with one shot on target. Simply not good enough. And the players only have themselves to blame for it because, as you said, with the team lineup, it was the exact same one that played against St Johnstone and played so well. I don't know what's the grand changes there. If the pressure got to them, who knows? But really, really bad. It was really, really bad on Saturday.
Yeah, just as you mentioned there about kind of in possession at times and the amount of balls that went straight out of play. Now, for folk who weren't maybe at the game, there was quite a strong wind, in fairness, but it still didn't justify the amount of times that we'd knock the ball about 3 or 4 passes. It would maybe get into one of our centre backs and they go and try and play a line ball or a ball kind of down the line to get Nubly in or something like that, and it's just gone, as you say, straight out of play. So overhit. There was a couple incidents with Devlin not under a great deal of pressure has put the ball straight out of play. It was just really lacklustre and a lack of composure at times in that second half and the first half in particular. But I'm not going to put it all down to that one game against Dundee United, because if you look at it throughout the season, we've had opportunities where we could have wrapped up top 6 weeks ago, essentially. Or we could have been going into that St Johnstone game, for example, looking to secure top 6. Use that St Mirren game earlier in the season where we equalised with a few minutes to go and then against 10 men concede a 91st minute winner. That 2-point swing has us in the top 6. It's fine margins like that, conceding that late equaliser at Tynecastle. Again, that's 2 points of a difference. We're in touching distance of the top 6 again right there. So there's plenty of incidents throughout the season where we've probably shot ourselves in the foot a little bit, which has meant we've gone into this game and it's a must win. But yeah, it's just incredibly disappointing. And do I get the fans' frustration with it? I think the frustration more comes from this run of results since February. And I went back and had a little bit of a look at it. We obviously had an unbeaten month in January, which finished off with a 0-0 draw against Hearts. Picked up a couple of really good performances and wins on the road against Ross County, St Johnstone, and the Cup as well against Steny over the course of the month. But we've had no away league goals or points since January the 14th. That's quite alarming away from home. 10 points from 33 over February, March and April. 3 wins from 11. 9 scored in 11 games. 0.81 goals a game. 22 conceded in 11 games. 22 goals a game. Failed to score in 6 of our last 11. 1 clean sheet in 11. It's some pretty damning stats, and it just shows you the tail off in our performances since that fantastic run of results in January.
It's bizarre what's happened, and I think even despite this, though, Euan, we're at a better points tally than we were last season. It's so weird that we're, a better points tally, but not even just this season, but in previous seasons as well. This seems like the worst we've played. I would even maybe go and say this has been like the worst we've played since we've been up, which sounds quite strange. And I don't know if it's because the lows have been so low. Whenever we've been getting hammered this year, essentially. There's been so many games that we've not laid a glove on, which is maybe the issue, especially within these last kind of 3 months. It's such a kind of strange season in this way because, yeah, all those ones that you've mentioned there as well, in terms of the points that we've missed. You go back to that Hearts one, there's an easy 2 points that you get that swings it back into our favour. St Mirren, the 2-1 game when we had, the better part of the second half with more men than them and missing a penalty and conceding in the last minute. And then obviously recently, I mean, the ones recently are just inexcusable. The 3-0s are, absolutely awful. In all honesty, looking at that, the teams around us have all hammered us this season apart from Hearts. Heavy frustrating in that kind of aspect because we know what the team's capable of. At the end of the day, we've just not had enough and we have to go again. And puts a bit of a damp squib on the rest of the season, though, doesn't it, Euan? Because, in all honesty, do we really care about these last 5 games?
But I think from listening to the manager's comments, he's going to be probably giving a bit of game time to guys that we know are going to be at the football club next year over these next 5 games, which is to a degree what he did last year when we went into the bottom 6, albeit I think when we went into the bottom 6 last year, we still probably had to get a couple of results to just ensure that we didn't get dragged into the playoff mix, which we did early doors, winning up at Pittodrie, winning against Hibs at home in those particular games. So you also need to bear in mind there's professional pride. You're playing up against a number of teams who have got a lot to play for between now and the end of the season. 4 teams right in the mix of a relegation scrap. So you can't necessarily just go in and down tools. Other teams have got a lot to play for in this situation. But it would be good for us to have a finish like we did last year to try and get some momentum going again for next season. Try and get some positive results on the board. Because the last thing you want is to, as you say, go out on an absolute dampener in these last 5 games, picking up no wins or picking up the odd point here or there. You want to go in and get some good results and some decent performances because you need something to build on going into next season. And obviously, Davey's going to get an opportunity to see what he has in the building going into the new campaign as well. But I'm very much a believer in the whole 10th place and above for us is deemed success. Do I believe we had a team that was capable of making it into the top 6? Yes, I absolutely do. So trust me, I don't want fans thinking I'm a happy clapper and I'm absolutely settled on finishing 7th. I think we had a team that was capable of pushing for that. Christ, I went on open goal and talked us up for pushing for European football this season. So I'm as disappointed as anyone that we've not made that grade. What I will say is I've seen a few comments in particular targeted individuals, individual players, individual staff at the club, in particular a lot of flack for the manager, calling for his head. I will say I think you're absolutely insane if you're calling for the manager's head. Put it this way, Davies not underachieved this season because the target every season is 10th. How can you explain sacking a manager when he is performing above expectations season on season? I'll be totally honest here, I think you're a bit deluded if you're wanting the manager sacked for not making it into the top 6. I think that's incredibly harsh if that's what you're looking for. But everyone's entitled to an opinion at the end of the day, and that's my one. But yes, I would encourage folk to try and get behind the team between now and the end of the season because we want to try and finish this season on as big a positive as possible. I know Davies set a target of us to get to 50 points, which would only be the second time in our history we've managed that in the top flight. The only other time we've managed that was when we finished 3rd. So that would be an achievement in itself, beating last season's points tally, which I think was 49 points. So there's still some incentives there for the players, and hopefully they understand that as well. And I'm sure they'll want to try and finish the campaign on as big a high as possible.
I mean, we say that, I guess, but the last month and that haven't really shown that the drive has kind of been there. A lot of these players is maybe going to be like their last kind of time playing for us, so hopefully, that kind of way they can repay the fans a bit with a couple of good performances to sign off on. I think that's going to be the interesting aspect of seeing what's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks as we prepare for next season. I've seen Davey talking about obviously like Jamie Brandon and Tom Parks have came back into the squads and that. I don't think he's necessarily said that either of them may be featuring quite heavily in these last games. I think he wants to give them the best chance just for getting a decent pre-season and then seeing what they're like by then. Obviously, players' contracts coming to the end of the season. Players who maybe people might come in for with bids as well. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think maybe these final 5 games will paint a picture as to, what perhaps our squad is going to be looking like next season and what the key areas are we're going to be needing to replace. But, we have to put it behind us. Hopefully some better performances can come up against some of the teams that we've had better success against this year. But yeah, as for now, it's just a bit hard to get excited for any of these kind of dead rubbers, in all honesty.
What? You're not buzzing? Come on, Angus. Come on. Party mood. Bottom 6, best of the rest. That's what it's all about.
We get to get beat off of Motherwell again. Kevin Van Veen. I didn't want to see that guy ever again.
We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. All of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Sterner for sponsoring Talk Livi.
The Lionesses were in action at home to Hutchison Vale on Sunday. Despite going behind, goals from Brogan Anderson and a stoppage time winner from Jem Dodds would mean they are 1 point away from clinching the league title. Angus, you were there to take in the drama. 1 point required now, job almost done.
Yeah, very much so. And I think they'll be very, very glad that they didn't let this one get out of their grasp. Yeah, last minute winner, it's that kind of thing that people always go on about. The sign of champions, maybe not particularly the best performance again, but getting the points together, getting the crucial win in the end. But yeah, it did seem as if it was one of those games that, I think we've seen it a bit last season where, the closer it got to the end of the season, a bit of slackness came in and stuff like that. And that was definitely the case in that first half. The 3-5-2 again. Still not the biggest fan of it, Euan, and I think it's causing still, more problems than not. And we went down another goal quite early on in the first half, which is seeming to be a bit of a common occurrence now that we're kind of going behind to then kind of push on. I think we would end up going into the break, 1-0 down. But in the second half, I do have to say that it was a lot better. First half, it was the kind of the issues that they have with that kind of formation where the fluidity between, the midfield to the attack just wasn't really working. Not an awful lot of chances were being created. I do think that the Hutchison Vale goalkeeper as well was doing very good at, kind of coming in and commanding everything as well. There was no scraps kind of being left as well. Second half, though, I did think it was a better performance from the team and, a lot more chances were getting created. Cash through plays, a great ball through to Brogan, who takes a great touch and finishes in the back of the net to make it 1-1. And from there on, we were very much in the driving seat and should have scored a lot earlier. I think that there was probably a good couple of chances, gilt-edged chances that probably shouldn't be hitting back in the net. None more so than Beth Mackay's, who has one that looks to be basically an empty goal, has like the whole goal to aim for. I don't know if it was on her weaker foot or that, but just completely mishit it, goes wide. And when that kind of stuff happens, you start to think that, maybe it's not going to be their day. But full credit to the team that they kept on trying to get into that final third, kept on creating chances. And eventually got their just reward, a great ball, a great bit of work from Tasha Frew again, 2 assists from a centre-half in a game is not too bad. Puts a cross in and Jen gets a wee glancing header to make it 2-1, take it 3 points. And yeah, very, very good turnaround from the first half in particular. I think in the end, the team deserved to get the 3 points. I think maybe there was a wee bit of a wake up at half time, or something was said or anything like that. To kind of change the fortunes, but it seemed just a lot better in terms of creating chances and getting themselves further up the pitch. Can't complain too much. Only 1 point now needed to win the title. I think if I'm correct, the next game should be against Renfrew, which will be absolutely massive, title decider essentially. So that'll be great to watch.
Yeah, as you say, it's become a little bit over the last couple of months more of a common occurrence that the girls are going behind in games and needing to show that character, as you say, to grind out results from a losing position, which, as you say, it's a constant trait of teams that tend to be pretty successful come the end of the season. And the girls have managed to do that again. Certainly, I only managed to catch the highlights, but Brogan's finish is fantastic. Great finish across the goalkeeper into the far corner. And then Jen Dodd's header, the celebrations kind of say it all. You could tell it was a late goal by the celebrations alone. Absolute euphoria amongst the girls when Jen managed to glance that header in. So, yeah, fantastic result. And as you say, it puts them within touching distance now. They go into these split games where they need to play games against Renfrew, Rossvale and Ayr United. As you mentioned, Renfrew are the closest rivals just now, 8 points adrift. So, and they come to the Tony Macaroni Arena looking to keep their title hopes alive going into the last couple of games and hopefully having something to play for there. So that's a massive, massive game for them. But they've also got an incentive as well because they play a playoff game to get promotion. So they're also looking to wrap up second place ahead of Rossvale. So they've still got a lot to play for going into that game. As I mentioned, can potentially get themselves back in the hunt for the league title if the girls were to have a collapse between now and the end of the season. But so far this campaign, they've been pretty good against Renfrew. They won 4-1 away from home in Renfrew, 10-1 victory at home, and then I think the last game finished in a draw over at Renfrew. So they've had their number a little bit. So you'd like to think they should be able to go into the game feeling confident that they can get the job done. And it would be fantastic to see as many bums on seats as possible because it's only their kind of second full season together for the girls, and getting promotion would be a massive, massive achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the emphasis that Renfrew will have now going into this as well, what they have to play for makes it even more exciting now. Obviously, it's basically a do or die situation. In all honesty, a point would seal the title for us. So, they have to come and win, which means that they'll probably come out and be, quite attacking, I would imagine. So hopefully it's a decent game in that regard. At the same time, though, they'll be quite wary of the threats that we pose. The last game that we played them at home, it was, the great, head and shoulders the greatest performance that the team's ever played. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see what kind of happens there. Massive, massive game, and it is just one that the team needs to be kind of ready for. As we've said, there's been a lot of games recently where quite a slow start, they've maybe not kind of got into the gears kind of quick enough against one of the better teams that may punish them. But I'm pretty sure they'll be kind of, getting used to that, getting the work done to try and amend that as well, as opposed to one of the kind of times against like Renfrew where, I think last season, in particular, the games against Renfrew and Rossvale were ones that they kind of maybe threw away good victories in the end. So, hopefully we can kind of rid those kind of things, and hopefully come not this Sunday but the following one, it'd be good to see as many people there as possible. To take in hopefully a wee title party. It's a return of question time as we answer questions sent in to us by the listeners. First up, we've got one from Daniel Shaw, who asks, could you see James Penrice being played in midfield, like in the 2017-18 season, next season, as a replacement for Omiyonga or Shinnie, if Montano will continue to be first choice left back? What are your thoughts on that, Euan?
Absolutely. I think it's a very good option to have. Penrice was excellent in his kind of half season that he had in our playoff promotion campaign. Played the vast majority of his games in centre midfield as a 3, which we've been playing pretty regularly for the last 2 campaigns. Obviously, since he's come back to the club, he's featured a lot more as a left back or a wing back. But I think Penrice is typical of kind of the players that we sign, in that he can play 2 or 3 positions, because you need that in our squad, on our budget. You need guys who can do a job in multiple areas. And the biggest compliment I could give Penrice when he first came to the club in that loan spell was he was an 18-year-old that played the game like he was 28. he showed a lot of composure and almost wisdom beyond his years on the football pitch. And the games that I've seen him since he's come back to the club in his second spell that he's played midfield, game at the start of last season against Aberdeen, he was arguably one of the best players in the park that day, playing centre mid. I think it was with Pittman and Hope that he was playing with that day. He was excellent. I think, again, the game we won 1-0 against Celtic, he played in midfield as well and had a very good game. The game that Andrew Shinnie scored that memorable winner. So he's more than capable of playing in there, and it's maybe an option given Montano's rise this season at left back, and he's, you could argue he's been one of our kind of players of the season this campaign, playing from left back. So yeah, it's certainly one I think the manager, it's an option for him. And in recent weeks we've seen Penners playing a little bit further forward as well on the right hand side, thoroughly enough, when he swung in that cross for Newbley. So he's capable of playing multiple positions, but it's definitely an option. What about yourself?
I don't like players playing in.
I can hear it. I could hear it before it came out.
It's basically my catchphrase on this. I understand what you're kind of saying in that. I guess it all depends on who we can bring in, who we can attract. Wouldn't like that to be our first choice for replacing the likes of Shinnie and Omiyonga. Both of them are to move on. Yeah, if it proves to work in the kind of the early stages, then sure. But I don't know if it's necessarily the go-to for me just yet. I would still need maybe a wee bit more convincing, I think.
Fair enough. Now, we've got a question from Malky Co, or Malky Cow. Apologies if I've pronounced that wrong. Would you rather have one season in the top six and never be in the Premiership again, or miss out on the top six by blowing out on the last game before the split every single year? Now, I don't know about you, Angus, that's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, 100%. Finishing, between 7th and 10th or 7th and 11th and winning the playoff every year. Yeah, if I had to choose between one stint in the top six where you're probably going to finish 6th or 5th for the most part, and then gone forever, yeah, I'm not quite seeing the benefits to that one. Maybe if it was like a more prestigious European spot, it'd maybe be a wee bit more of a debate. Maybe if you got like the third place where you could somehow get into like the Europa League group stages or something, I'd maybe start thinking about that. But yeah, I'll absolutely take the bottom half to consistently be a Premiership club.
Yeah, because we could quite easily go and win a cup double whilst doing that, finishing in the bottom six. You could still do that. So yeah, I think that one's a no-brainer. And I always go back to a quote from Stephen Lawless when he was on this podcast. I'm not going to tell my grandwains that I finished in the top six one season. If you were qualifying for Europe and things like that, you could maybe get the argument a little bit more. But yep, I would take Livingston Football Club being a Premiership football club every year for the rest of their days, rather than one solitary top six finish. Richie Webster, who is a rogue Falkirk fan who's came on to, but he happens to work with an ex-host of this podcast, and you'll probably get that from his next question. Is your show better or worse since Andrew Semple left? I think I know the answer. Richie, you know the answer as well. I know the answer. Angus, you know the answer. It's a no-brainer. But Richie did have a follow-up to that, which was, what do Livy fans think of the continual criticism of their pitch? Is it justified at all, or just sour grapes from other clubs and their supporters? My argument with the surface all the time is, if it's approved by FIFA and UEFA, why can't we use it? If it can be used in the Champions League, if it can be used in World Cup and European qualifiers, the argument that they shouldn't be in Scotland's top flight, I just don't think really carries. And our surface is the most consistent in the country.
This is one that I just can't get fed up talking about. People want to attribute everything to this pitch. Look at the injury records of a lot of other teams and stuff like that. So, and that even disproves one of the main things that people say about it as well. It's more just kind of like we expect it to be said about us, and it's not really kind of worth kind of taking the thoughts on of it anymore. It's just like, okay, you're not going to listen to any potential benefits you've made. They've made the mind up that it's end all be all like awful kind of surface to play on. So yeah, they can enjoy and rile themselves up all about it, I think.
Yeah, it is one of those things you hear just so often. I think even when the football club posts up something about the club shop stocking mugs and coasters, you see a Celtic fan. Celtic fans are really obsessed with us. I've come to notice this in recent times. really, really obsessed was in Davy Martindale. But, they'll go, why don't you get rid of your shite pitch? Now, if that's your automatic thought on a post by the football club selling mugs and coasters is to comment on the pitch, then I think that says more about your life than our football pitch, to be honest. But the next question, Angus, kind of has a bit of a sinister undertone to it. And I don't know if this came about straight after in the aftermath of the Dundee United game, but this is from Claire Ferguson, by the way. If you had an itch, but you could only scratch it if you killed someone from Scottish football, who would it be and why? Or would you keep the itch forever? Who are you going for? Are you keeping that itch?
I have no idea what to say because, who is the least likable person in Scottish football? I mean, keeping an itch forever is a bit of a hassle, and I think just out of pure reflex you'd end up doing it, as opposed to who is being sacrificed for it. That's just going to sound really, really bad of wanting somebody to die. Who can we throw under the bus? Who do we not like, Euan? Who's been a menace? Kevin Van Veen. He can go.
He has been a bit of a menace to us this season, hasn't he?
I will gladly scratch any itch to get that guy to not score against us for one of these goddamn Livingston versus Motherwell games. So we play them, midweek game. So if that miraculous itch comes up from now and then and something happens to Kevin Van Veen, didn't hear it from us. That's all I'm going to do.
My first question was, where's the itch? Because see if the itch is in a slightly more private area or your arse, you're probably going to get done for public indecency at one point. Let's be honest. As you say, you're going to go into autopilot. You're going to want to give it a wee scratch, right? That's only natural. It's only human nature. But in terms of who I would go, this was quite funny because I asked my girlfriend Shannon about it. I thought she might hesitate, a bit like you. Without barely a millisecond going by, she said Neil Lennon. Guess who she supports?
I wonder who she supports, yeah.
But my one would be a recent one who has really started to grind my gears, and it's Stuart Dougal, the ex-referee who does the verdict on BBC Scotland. I have never seen a man tie himself in so many knots to defend the referee's decision as Stuart Dougal does. See if the man would just come and admit that a referee's made a mistake or the VAR's made a mistake. Fine, your life would be spared and I will continue on with the itch. But, mate, come on. So Stuart Dougal might be one to get somebody who can actually admit when a referee's made a mistake. Another one, Livy related, Alan Preston, Angelo Massoni. If we're going Livy related, Alan Preston has a constant gripe with us, albeit it's kind of harsh on Alan Preston because he was part of the backroom staff for our cup winning team, but he's had very sour grapes ever since he got sacked. So that's maybe one. But yeah, a lot depends on where the itch is. I'm not going to lie, Claire. But thank you. That was an intriguing question.
Next up, we've got Colin Brown, who has asked, to what extent should Livy play the Livy way, style formation, etc., irrespective of the opposition or venue? He does add that exceptions could be against the Old Firm to avoid like Camerons, but otherwise should be playing to our strengths against the rest of the teams. And I think he's got a good bit of point to this, Euan, is how many times we went to certain places and we surprised ourselves by playing, the kind of same way that we always would. Whereas, quite recently we've tried to, shore things up and it's went dreadfully. So yeah, you in agreement with Colin that, we should be kind of looking to play the same way against, the other 9 teams barring the Old Firm?
Yeah, football's a sport where tactics can play an awful lot in it in terms of tweaking your shape and things like that to try and combat certain threats that a team has. So I do get it. It's part and parcel of the game of football, but I would rather see us focus on ourselves and what we can do to cause other teams problems. But I do get from time to time that you will tweak your shape. For example, games away at the Old Firm, I think that's pretty much a given. We're not really going to go to the Old Firm and play a 4-3-3 and go all out attack, are we? You need to pick and choose your battles sometimes, even when we're going to places like Tynecastle, Pittodrie, some of the bigger clubs in this country. Again, I can maybe understand a little tweak in shape or things like that, but I feel we should predominantly focus on what we do really well, You look at the team, for example, that came up through the playoffs, religiously played a 3-5-2 all season, and we were so well drilled in that shape, and teams couldn't really handle us. They didn't know what to do with us vast majority of that season, and we carried that on in our first season in the top flight, stuck with what we knew, stuck with how we played for the vast majority of that campaign, and it got us good results. So yeah, I would look at us trying to focus on what we do best and play our Livy way.
Yeah, I have to agree, especially if we get rid of some of those performances we've seen in the last couple of months, to be honest with you. It's more so just the kind of the manner that we've maybe like lined up, and it's just kind of completely backfired and made it seem as if we've done nothing. So yeah, leave it all in the pitch and see what happens essentially. But Matt Hay asks, what positions do you think Davy needs to strengthen for next season? Obviously, we know a number of players are moving on. Fitzwater's away, Devlin's away, Omiyonga's probably away. Shinnie, there's been talks about him being offered a new contract, amongst others. Where do you think are the places we should be looking to improve you in?
I would go on record as saying a right back. That's not a disrespect to Jamie Brandon, but I think we'll need another option there with Nicky Devlin moving on to compete for that particular position. So that's one I would look to add a bit of strength and depth to. Another centre back. Obviously, Jack Fitzwater moving on. I know we signed Luigi De Lucas in the summer. Tom Parks has been back training. He was involved with the reserves, but granted that Tom Parks has played 11 games in 2 seasons for the football club. Can you rely on him to be a regular in the first team next year? We're not 100% sure on that. So I would probably look at another centre back. I would also like another wide midfield player, taking into account there's a good chance you could lose Joe Nubley in the summer if the right offer comes in. And I feel we've had to shoehorn some players in there at times, in the likes of maybe a Shinnie or a Stephen Kelly and a wide role, or Penrice as well has played out wide at times. So I felt we've had to shoehorn guys into that. So maybe another wide player to kind of complement, the likes of Bradley, Nubley, Bahambula, and probably another striker is another one as well. I don't think we've had a proper backup to Bruce Anderson the last couple of seasons. Obviously, Joel's played as the kind of focal point on occasions, but I think everyone would agree that Joel's most effective games for us have come from wide positions, and I feel we need another option to Bruce Anderson up top as well. What about yourself?
I think maybe a couple of centre halves would be ideal, to be honest with you. We're going into the new season. Well, we're ending this season with Fitzwater going away. De Lucas is still getting used to the game. Boyce is fit. And then you've got 2 defenders who are coming back from injury. I think you could maybe do with another 2 who could maybe be readily available to come in the pre-season straight away, or have been fit or been coming off the back of a season already. Right back, of course, as well. Jamie Brandon's just had no game time, so we don't really know if he's up to the standard, in all honesty. Hopefully we'll get to see a wee bit more of him before the end of the season. Midfield, I think we're going to need to bring in somebody as well, because losing Omiyonga is a massive hit for me. If we lose Shinnie as well, that would maybe, if we kept Shinnie, that would maybe soften it a little bit. You can maybe bring in somebody maybe a little bit younger who could maybe help out. And then wide areas has been an issue kind of this season when we've missed Nubley or Bradley. We've been kind of shoehorning people in there. So I completely agree with you there. There's a certain winger at Hearts who's fallen out of favour, it seems. Let's see if we can test the waters and get the band back together with a certain favourite on this podcast.
Certain Mr. Snodgrass. Get that wand of a left foot back to West
No, I was
Lothian.
not talking about Snodgrass.
I was going Snoddy. You were going Alan Forrest, weren't you?
Absolutely.
There we go. Both of us have a favourite on this podcast. But yeah, that's a possibility. You never know. You never know unless you ask the question, do you? But yeah, those are certainly positions that I think are in need of being strengthened or options added. All about Livingston FC asked, what place do you think will finish next season? He also asked another question, but I thought it was slightly derogatory towards the squad.
Next season, it's hard. It's obviously very hard to be talking about that just now, because 1, we don't know what our team's going to look like. 2, we don't know what the other teams are going to look like. 3, we don't even know what teams are going to be in league next year. We may be losing 2 teams from this, so you could say, like, who's bottom right now? Ross County. So you maybe get, say, Queen's Park come up, and then Dundee could maybe come up through the playoffs in place of like Kelly or something. Who knows? And I think that could determine something as well. Looking at the teams in the Championship, I would like to think that we'd be able to do better than those. So I think there's two teams immediately we should be maybe looking to do better than. Dundee have been quite a strange one in recent seasons when they came up, did not really offer too much in the league. Yeah, as in right now, you're looking at our record against most of these teams as well, with maximum points against Kilmarnock and St Johnstone. So there's two teams who you'd like to think that we're ahead of in the kind of schedule at least. But again, it all comes down to recruitment of players and depend on what team we see. So right now, I'm going to say 8th off of nothing really.
Thoroughly enough, Angus, I was going to say 8th as well. That's going to be my guess. I think, as you say, there's a few teams in the league that you would say we're ahead of just now in terms of our squad. But you also need to bear in mind for a club, say, like Dundee United, they have a lot more financial power than a club like ourselves, and you would expect them to probably recruit fairly heavily in the summer, so you don't know what their team's going to look like. As you say, you've got the potential of two teams dropping out the league and two teams coming in. Dundee are in prime position just now to win the Championship, so they look like they should probably get that job done. Queen's Park have had a fantastic season as well, so it'd be interesting to see what they could do in the playoffs. And bear in mind, there's other teams in the playoffs as well. Inverness have had we've essentially rescued Inverness' season with that cup defeat to them. So the guys on the Widnes Shuffle, you can thank us for that. But yeah, I think it's difficult to predict, but I'll go 8th as a guess. And then the last question, Mike Walker, is it time for the club to publicise more locally the need for new shareholders and current shareholders to buy more equity to help tip the balance sheet towards squad quality? Now, I think this is off the back of our recent accounts for 2001-2002 being released, where the club appeared to make an £800,000 loss, although I think a lot of that is down to loans COVID loans we got from the Scottish Government, and it's been well documented that we're expecting to make a £400,000 loss this year, and I think that's probably why the top 6 finish was maybe looked at a bit more fondly for us this season in terms of a financial boost. But what's your thoughts on that, Angus?
I think in general, we need to be looking for investment. I think if we're wanting to kind of maintain ourselves as a Premiership club, we're definitely going to need to. That would also just help us in being able to attract a better fan base and stuff like that as well. Whether or not that's going to come about or not will yet to be seen. Hopefully there is something's looking out there could possibly help us out. Hopefully even there's like some lunatic from like the Middle East or that who wants to spend some money and can turn us into the third power of Scottish football or something. Who knows?
Third? You're settling for third? No, if somebody comes over from Saudi Arabia to buy us, I'm going first.
Third power isn't. There would be 3 because there is currently 2 right now. We will smash those half-wits through the West anyway. Don't worry. But yeah, we've kind of reached that kind of ceiling. I think where maybe the kind of players we're going to attract, are we going to be able to get the likes of an Omionga and that again on such kind of cheap wages and that? And I mean, to be fair, with Davies negotiating possibly, but if we wanted to kind of keep ourselves maintained at this level, then yeah, we're definitely going to need it. I think at some point, a lot of these kind of bigger teams are going to get their act together. You look at like Dundee United and that, who are spending a lot of money. Surely they can't just keep throwing money at it, and it's just not going to keep on going well for them. And as more of these teams get into like healthier positions, it's going to be harder for us to kind of compete with and combat against that. But yeah, hopefully even like Lyndon Dykes gets sold for a couple of million. Team in the Championship or that wants to take him over from a struggling QPR, that would maybe help us out a little bit as well.
I have seen a certain other Rangers have been linked with Lyndon Dykes fairly heavily recently, given his ex-manager is the current manager in Govan. So watch that space, and that would be a certainly very good windfall for the football club if Dykesy was to move on for some decent money. But yeah, I think if there's any sugar daddies in the West Lothian area that are looking to invest in a football club, feel free. I'm sure Livingston FC would absolutely bite your hand off for that. But I think any football club is always looking for some degree of investment from, be that supporters, be that sponsors, be that as I say, a sugar daddy that just wants to get involved with a football club. It's part and parcel of football once again. And yes, I think Davey spoke about it earlier in the season that he was looking at, hovered the idea of one of the Premier League clubs almost having a tie-in with Livy in terms of sending players up here to get first team experience and things like that. That was something that Davey had kind of mentioned in passing. Whether something like that would materialise, you never know. But yeah, it's one where you can't really predict. You know, the current shareholders, I think, have put a lot of their own money into the football club over the years, the likes of John Ward and Robert Wilson. Both are very, very successful businessmen in their own right, but I also don't think they're absolute multi-millionaires at the same time. I just think they're sensible people with sensible business heads. And I think they've done a fantastic job in terms of running the football club and its finances accordingly as well. But next season is going to be incredibly difficult because Davey is probably going to have to cut his budget ever so slightly. Does that mean we just go to the point where we run with a smaller squad and try and work off maybe some loan deals here or there, which I know we didn't do this season compared to previous years where we maybe brought in players on loan? You know, that might be a way of kind of padding out the squad a little bit more in a more cost-effective manner.
I think that definitely would be more effective in all honesty. I think we're losing the likes of Devlin, Fitzwater, who will be two of the higher earners. Probably looking at a couple of the players on the fringes who are quite high earners who could maybe be leaving as well. We've seen the likes of Kinchalves have been setting out on loan. I would imagine that he's on a considerable wage. If you're able to move somebody like that on, if he's clearly not making a grade here, you can reinvest that money maybe a wee bit more into a couple of smaller kind of players, I guess. And if you could do something like that where you get maybe two young prospects for the wage of, you know, one player who hasn't really done an awful lot, I think that looks like kind of good business. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see about that. The loan one, I think, is an interesting one as well. I think that could be something that could maybe do us a wee bit of good. But as we say, you know, for every Odin Bailey that you have as a loan signing, you have a Chukwuemeka as well. So there's always that kind of thing that is thrown into there. But it's kind of exciting in a way. The summer transfer window is always exciting in that way, where it's like, oh, who's going where, who's going to show up. We've had some decent luck with that in the last couple of years as well. So yeah, hopefully this will be a similar one as well.
Well, that's all the questions we've got, but thank you so much everyone for sending them in. We'll probably do this again at the end of the split games for some questions as well as start of the new season. So always keep those questions coming in. And delighted to welcome Ross from the County Corner back on to Talk Livi. Ross, how you doing, mate? Not a great weekend for you guys, much like ourselves.
No, what day is it now? It's Wednesday now. Hopefully, I think I've recovered. I've recovered from our own result. Maybe not so much the results around us on Saturday afternoon.
Apologies.
I thought I'd get that in there. Yeah, not a great weekend.
It wasn't a good weekend at all for yourselves or ourselves. So it's not been long since the sides last met, though. It was just before the international break in March. What were your thoughts on the game? Obviously, Livy came out on top in the game, winning 2-1. But what was your kind of take on it?
I thought it was actually quite an interesting game. I thought we got hit with two quick-fire goals, which, you know, it was tough to take because I thought at that point in the game, I thought we were kind of starting to grow into it a wee bit. We were starting to put your defence a bit under pressure. There was a couple of half chances. I think Keith Watson had one at the back post about 5 minutes before the goal. So we were definitely growing into the game. So as soon as you're 2-0 down within 2 minutes, you know, it's tough to then pick the boys back up and go again. But then in the second half, I thought we started a bit slowly in the second half, but then kind of grew into it a bit more, got the goal back. And then, you know, we're just having to go all out, try and pick up something from it. We'll leave ourselves stretched at the back, and you guys had a couple of breakaways that you probably could have killed off the game. Didn't happen. Brophy had a good chance, I think, about 12 yards out. I can't remember who put the block in.
I think it was James Penrice blocked it for us.
Yeah,
remember.
I mean, if he's not there, that's probably 2-2, and then we're back up the road with a point. But Yeah, I think that 2-minute spell in the first half is just what just totally killed us.
Yeah, it was quite a strange game because I mind talking about it on our podcast, and I don't think we'd been particularly great. Looked a bit lethargic almost, and as you mentioned, you guys had a couple of relatively decent chances earlier on in the game, but then Newbley pops up with that header at the back post, and as you say, just to double the punishment, Nicky popped up with a cracking strike for ourselves, and I thought we were fairly comfortable in the second half at the point where you guys managed to get back in the game. Obviously, the goal got given through VAR in the end, and then, as you mentioned, I think you guys had 4 or 5 forwards on chasing the game, but it made it. We probably should have killed the game off in that spell, as you say, with a couple of the counter attacks we had, but didn't manage to do that. But much like ourselves, since the international break, it's not been good reading. It's 1 win and 4 for both sides. You guys had a win up in Perth, but you have had some difficult games in that spell. Has there been anything in the performances to kind of take from it? I know your league position would maybe beg to differ on that. Any positives on that?
I think the performance against Celtic, it was a kind of different performance in each half. The first half was defensively really strong. You know, we weren't allowing them to kind of play through our lines. They only kind of, I would say, opened us up maybe once or twice towards the end of the half. Defensively, we looked very good. Obviously got hit with a penalty with the last kick of the half.
What was your thoughts on the penalty?
I think in football, if you are marking someone, you are going to try and get touch tight to them, and you're going to do everything you can to stop them getting a free header. And that is why Carter Vickers has got a couple yards on Alex. So Alex is trying to do everything he can to get back across to stop Carter Vickers from just having a clean header. He's done that by putting his hand on his back. Carter Vickers has missed the ball and then it's hit Alex's hand. I think it's harsh. I get why it was given, and there was definitely a lot of uproar, I think, from county fans about it, and VAR has certainly not been kind to us since it's come in. But it was really interesting watching that, because from where we sit in the jail end, Willie Collum looked like he was about to give it initially, took us halfway up, but then put it back down again. So either he's seen it or the linesman is in line with it and has seen it, but they thought, well, no, I'm not sure. They've decided not to give it, or thought, well, VAR will back me up if I have seen it's correct and we can give the penalty or whatever. But I think it's harsh in footballing terms. You know, It's not like he's not trying to block the ball with his arm. He's trying to get contact with Carter Vickers to stop him having a clean header.
It's one of those ones, we've had a few like that this season where, especially with handball and penalties being given, where it's what's he meant to do in that situation. But it is one of those ones when you go law of the game, his arms out from his body, you can get why it's been given. But my question would always be, if that was the opposite box against Celtic or Rangers, is that getting looked at? So the conspiracy theorists in Scottish football. But no, it's
totally.
As you kind of mentioned, you were talking there about the run of form. Obviously, you had a game against Aberdeen as well, which you lost out. I think a Friday night game you guys lost. The game Shinnie got sent off. You obviously won at St Johnstone, and then the defeat at the weekend. I take it spirits aren't great going into these split fixtures, Ross.
No, I'd say not. You know, the performances in the run up to the split were fine up until Saturday. I thought, you know, the first half against Celtic was fine. Second half, we really kind of tried to press them high up the pitch, kind of had them rattled for a bit, and obviously they won the game very late on. St Johnstone, I thought, down at McDermott Park, we were great. I mean, I thought we were comfortable throughout the game. It was a blow losing Eamon Brophy early on, but Simon Murray came on, grabbed a really good goal in the first half, and then second half we got another early goal. I think it was in about 5-10 minutes into the half, and then from that point on, it was comfortable. We probably could have gotten 3-4 if we'd taken our chances, and looked defensively solid as well. So I think confidence was starting to build, and we thought, right, okay, this might be the start of a bit of momentum. You know, we had decent performance against Celtic, and now we've got the result against St Johnstone. Against Aberdeen, I thought we were okay. It was just a bit huff and puff. I think Aberdeen looked very confident defensively. You know, they looked like a team that I think at the time it was 5 clean sheets in 6 games or something along those lines. So they were very comfortable. I don't think we kind of pulled them apart as such. We just, when we loaded the ball into the box, we had a lot of crosses in there. It just wasn't breaking for us. and they were clinical with their one chance in the first half, and then after that point it was kind of a bit huff and puff, and Aberdeen managed the game well. And then Saturday, any momentum came to a shattering halt. Sky gave us the big build up that we've got the third best defensive record in the league. I've not checked the stats after Saturday. I don't know if that's still correct or not.
There's a bunch of teams that have all conceded 52 goals.
Oh, is there? Right,
yeah, we are one of them. But there's about 5 or 6 teams, even Aberdeen and Hibs have both conceded 52 as well. So there's a bunch of teams all kind of sitting on the same number. So basically the vast majority of the league defensively isn't really great at this moment in time.
No, definitely not. And it was a tough watch on Saturday. It really was. I think, obviously Hearts with their European money that they've received last season, they've got a really strong squad. Okay, they weren't in the best place going into the game, but if they have an on day, then they can, as we've seen, they've put 5 past Aberdeen earlier in the season as well. So they can do it to better teams than us in the league. But I think it was more at times, I guess, the manner of the performance, especially defensively. We just looked like we were getting cut open just at ease. I mean, it could have been double figures if it wasn't for Ross Laidlaw, and it could have been double figures comfortably. I think results like that really, we'll call them season definers, especially at the end of the season. Going into the split, you're thinking, right, we're going to be playing the teams around you, but you want to be carrying confidence into those games. Right. So what confidence is there going to be left in the squad after a 6-1 defeat like that? It will be very interesting to see the response, like the immediate response, how we start against yourselves next week. But yeah, it's tough. And I think morale, especially amongst the fans just now, and no doubt amongst the players, will be low as well. I think having the week off might be a good thing, not having to jump straight back into it. They can regroup, reassess, and kind of go from there. But yeah, not great. I will put it that way. It's probably the best way and most polite way I can put it.
Do you fancy County to get themselves out of trouble? It's currently 4 points adrift at the bottom of the table. As you mentioned, the split, especially when you're in that mix, you've got St Johnstone there, Kilmarnock there, Dundee United there, so there's plenty of teams in the mix.
The optimist in me says yes. I think I've been personally been quite calm regardless of County's position in the league this season. I've always thought, we've got enough quality to get out of it. The gap's not... If the gap has grown, we've had plenty of games where we've shown signs that, we're decent enough that we can get out of it. And potentially the other sides around us have shown that they're as fragile, if not more fragile, to potentially get dragged back in. 4 points going into that is a big gap, especially with our first 2 games being yourself and I think Motherwell's the second game, if I'm remembering correctly. So by the time we've then played the 3 teams around us, the gap could be even bigger. And I guess that's the immediate worry, is that we're looking at these first 2 games thinking, well, one of them, if not both of them, are must-wins. I mean, we'd love to pick up 15 out of 15 points. I'm not saying that, but, realistically, we have to start picking up points immediately, So part of me says, yes, I think we can. If we perform how we performed against likes of St Johnstone, how we performed against Celtic, and with players coming back from injury, Jan Danda's back from injury. I almost think he wasn't risked at Tynecastle. Can have a few goals down to, there's no point putting him on in case, I think he had a hairline fracture in his foot. So don't want him to then put him onto a game that's already gone and then have him then missing for the rest of the season if he picks up any kind of injury there. Ben Paddington's back. Hopefully Brophy's on the way back to some sort of fitness. I don't think there's been any timeline kind of being put on his return. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But, the need for points is immediate.
The relegation scrap this season kind of reminds me a little bit of when we had it, I think, the 04-05 season, where it's probably only one team that finished in the bottom half that were kind of out of trouble. But I think ourselves, Dundee United, Dunfermline, Dundee were all in the mix going into the final day. So it kind of it's an exciting end for the neutral, and in my perspective, I think we're probably safe. So it's exciting for us to watch, but hopefully County can pull through. But in terms of looking to the game in a couple of weeks' time, how do you expect County to line up against Livingston?
I mean, it's a very good question, because I guess going with the kind of the 3-5-2 is the kind of been the preferred shape recently. Will Malky stick with that, or will he make changes after Saturday's performance? I don't know. I think there will be personnel changes in the starting 11, but it's honestly, I don't know is probably the best way to describe it. I almost don't know what we're best to go into that game with. You know, the highlights of the last few weeks, you know, Dylan Smith. Dylan's been great since he's come in, made his his full debut against Celtic. You know, as a 16-year-old playing centre half, he's looked really comfortable, but then had a really tough time on Saturday. So,
which you'd kind of half expect a 16-year-old to probably have at some point coming into the first team.
Exactly. You know, and I think you know, that he'll take lessons from that. I mean, I was talking to someone else about it the other day, but I think the one that popped into my head was Aaron Hickey. I mean, Hickey was doing really well at Hearts, and then I think he had a really bad day against Chris Burke when they were down at Kilmarnock, and I think, you know, that's when it was like, well, is he going to kick on? What's kind of going to happen here? But you see the level he's performing at just now. So, you know, it's always going to happen to a young player. They're going to have an off day against teams like this. So I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens there, if he's then put back into the team, or if he's maybe taken out just to protect him in a way. So I guess that's one area I'll be really interested in. Middle of the park as well. Hopefully Danda's back in the starting 11 as well. He's our most creative player. He's our most influential player going forward as well. Simon Murray was used almost as like a right midfielder or like a right wing back at times on Saturday, which didn't work.
Yeah, I was about to say that's not a position I would associate Simon Murray with.
No, and you know, got his goal against St Johnstone from playing as a 2 with Jordan, and I think we've had our best attacking performances when we have gone with 2 up front. You know, at times Jordan did look very isolated on Saturday, even when it was 0-0, we were trying to get the ball up to him. He's up against, you know, 3 Hearts defenders at times, you know. So having someone in around him will be key. So yeah, I wish I could probably tell you the strongest 11 going into it, and I probably could have done, you know, given it roughly prior to the result on Saturday, but I guess it'll be really interesting to see what changes are made. You know, if it's going to revert to maybe some more experienced heads coming in. You know, Keith Watson, Jordan Tilson came on Saturday and kind of calmed things down, but also Hearts are kind of taking their foot off the gas a little bit at that point. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see.
And what would you go prediction wise then? Bear in mind we're on a pretty stinking run of form, so you're probably catching us at a good time.
Well, that was what I thought last month as well, but that didn't really happen, did it? I'm going to go 2-1 County again, because the last performance we had like that was early in the season against Motherwell, the 5-0 game, and the immediate game after that was yourselves, and we picked up a win there. So the optimist in me will always go for 3 points. You've said there, you know, you guys are on a poor run. Okay, you're thinking you're mathematically safe, but you know, I guess the target now will be tie up 7th. I guess it's always the question when there's a team pushing to finish top of the bottom 6 is how motivated are they to do that? You know, it's you know, it's not quite the, you know, get out of a relegation scrap, you know, as if your kind of life depends on it, or pushing for the top 6. You know, it's almost we've not made the top 6, and then it's how do you kind of go into those last 5 games?
We had the exact same position last year, so it'll be interesting. We responded pretty well last year, 1-3, drew 2 of the post-split fixtures. So I think as Livy fans, we're hoping for that kind of end to the season to give us a bit of optimism going into next year. But I would fully expect you to predict a win, Ross. You need to back your team. But as I did last week when we had Andy on, Dundee United fan, I've decided to ask you now there's been quite a few players that have played for both clubs over the years. I mean, I drew up a list of players at top of my head, and you kind of almost forget that some of them play for both clubs. But I'm asking you for a player that's been very good for Ross County, that's played for both clubs, and a wee dud in there as well.
So the hits I made a note of, you know, were Martin Scott. He came up with probably one of the most iconic Ross County moments in our history with the second against Celtic in the 2010 Scottish Cup semi-final. Colin McMenamin as well for the first division winning season, 19 goals and 6 assists, which include a 94th minute equaliser away to Falkirk, which played a massive part in that title push. But I went with the one I want to highlight the most is Scott Boyd. Scott's our second most all-time appearance record holder, behind Michael Gardine. Nicknamed the Ginger Pele, so how can you not pick him for just like that? You know, he's helped the club achieve promotion, top 6 finish for the first time. He was here when we've won the Challenge Cup previously as well. And another memorable moment from the 2010 Scottish Cup run was the last minute winner against Hibs to send us to Hampden was just mental, and the pitch invasion after that was great. So the memories from that are brilliant.
Scott Boyd's a funny one for us because he'd only made a handful of appearances. He was a youngster that kind of came through what was a very good youth system at that point.
Yeah.
And he was kind of breaking into the team off the back of our League Cup winning campaign. And then the following season we were in our relegation scrap that year in the top flight. So he didn't really get the opportunity at Living. I think, did he not initially go out on a loan? I think he might have gone on a loan spell to Partick Thistle at some point and then ended up at Ross County after that. But as you say, it was fantastic when he was up there.
Oh, just, phenomenal. To me, that many appearances for one club nowadays is almost unheard of in most cases, So, no, he was brilliant. And definitely, I think a lot of County fans were disappointed when he moved to Kilmarnock because he was still more than good enough for County. But there's all sorts of rumours about the move and stuff like that. But who knows?
A few other players I thought of that were pretty decent for both. Richie Britton was very good for both clubs. I was gutted when Richie Britton left ourselves, and he was a player I kind of always thought might come back at some point, being a local lad from Bathgate. But Jordan White, who's currently there, Josh Mullen was another one who was very good in spells for both clubs as well. Just another couple that I kind of came up with.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Richie there was our captain throughout the Scottish Cup run, the promotion, the first top 6 finish. I mean, scored our first Premiership goal as well, the free kick against Celtic. So he was phenomenal for County as well. Jordan as well, as a current player, I'm a big fan of Jordan. I mean, we spoke about this before. He's very harshly criticised by, some supporters, and it's probably come from any club that he's been at because he's a striker that does so much work off the ball that goes unnoticed, and is so key to the players around him as well. Josh Mullen, that championship winning season was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we were gutted to lose him, and I guess seeing him perform for Ayr and things like that almost brings back the memories of at that level and things, And I mean, he single-handedly won us that Challenge Cup against Connah's Quay Nomads. What was that? 2019.
Yeah.
When he came off the bench with about 20 minutes to go and scored 2 as soon as he came on. So, great memories there. I guess for flops, I've got 2 noted down, and I think one's perhaps I think they're both a bit harsh. One in particular, but the first one I've got noted down is Stephen Kelly.
Right. Okay.
I guess the time he made the move to County, I think there was a lot of excitement about his move. That he'd done really well at Ayr. Rangers fans, perhaps because he was a Rangers player, were hyping him up to a level that we were thinking, okay, we're getting a really good player here. Seen his record the past season, really good at set pieces, things like that. So we were excited. As the season went on, I don't know if it was maybe just because it was his first season at top flight football, but I think those high expectations weren't ever really met. I think we as County fans, hearing all those reviews, seeing how he did at Ayr, we're expecting him to perform for us how he is performing for you guys right now. I mean, he made 29 appearances for County and got 3 assists, which isn't bad for a young player in midfield playing top flight football for the first time. I guess it was just, I don't know if the expectations were just too high from outside kind of sources and things like that. Plus, I guess the Old Firm fans have a tendency to, when they've got a lone player out in the other teams in the league, they'll go onto the BBC Sport app and start voting him as like a 10 out of 10. He's a man of the match. anytime you'd scroll down to like the match report and see like who was given man of the match, like even if it was like we were done like 4-0 or something like that, like Stephen Kelly still giving like a 9.6 out of 10, and you're like, how on earth is that happening? Or like, just come on for 5 minutes, and I'm like, who's doing that? You know, yeah. So I think that one's maybe a bit harsh. The other one I've got is another current player, you guys, is Sean Kelly.
Right.
Sean was really kind of hampered with injuries and things during his time at County. I mean, made 68 appearances, 31 in the Premiership over the 2 seasons that he was with us in the Premiership, and then 20 in the Championship. I mean, you'll probably know it yourself. Going forward, he's got a really good delivery hand from set pieces as well. But I think defensively, he was always a bit suspect. I think last season in the 3-2 game in Dingwall, I thought that was almost like the perfect kind of Sean Kelly game as such from what we'd seen, because he put in a great cross to Bruce Anderson for the equaliser.
Yeah.
In the first half. But then in the second half, he gives away a daft penalty, you know, for diving in. Just, yeah, I think that's what we were kind of used to seeing at times at County. You know, even this season, you know, I think he's been playing almost like a centre half or defensive midfield for you guys, maybe more often. Yeah,
Sean's a funny one with us, because when he came in, we'd signed him from Falkirk, and he'd had quite a few injuries in League One with Falkirk, and that was a Falkirk team that had ended up finishing 5th in League One as well. So I think fans kind of thought it was a bit of a desperate signing at the time, and obviously Davey had worked with his brother Liam over the years as well at Livingston, so must have known him to a degree. And Sean, I think probably by his own admission, would say wasn't in his best physical condition when he first signed for us. And he was playing either at centre half in a back three, or he played a few games at left back as well, but he kind of disappeared for a while, second half of the season, and he came back in. It was the first game before the split against Motherwell, which we'd rather not talk about on our podcast, but he played centre mid as kind of the anchor of a three, and he was unbelievable. And I'd argue we've been better when he's been in this season in our midfield three, and he's a totally different player. He started becoming one of our first names on the team sheet at the start of the season. So it's frightening how Davies, but he's a great squad player in the sense that he can play 2 or 3 positions, which on our budget's always a plus point. But he's been very good, certainly since he came back into the side last year. Stephen Kelly as well, as you mentioned, I've raved about him constantly on our podcast. He's probably first midfield player we've signed in a while that I've been proper excited about, because who doesn't love a kind of midfielder that scores rakers or chips in with a goal here or there and's got a creative spark about him? And I think Stephen's definitely got that. As you say, you got him probably in his really early years getting first team action, where that might have been a negative for you guys, and that he was brushing off cobwebs and things like that in terms of making that step up. A couple of duds I thought of for us, and I know I'm pretty sure he was in the mix for our dud 11 we did when we first started doing the podcast, but he's probably a bit of a legend at you guys, is Derek Adams. He was hopeless, one of the worst footballers I've seen at Livingston, and he was also involved in probably our worst team in our history, which is the team that got finished with 18 points and got relegated from the Premiership. But he was terrible. And another one I thought that had made a decent amount of appearances for both clubs, but never kind of really cut it with us, was Gary Miller. Gary Miller, I think he made about 40, 50 appearances for us, but again, he was a youth product, but just never really kicked on at us at all, never really cemented a place. He was one of a number of players that ended up in that kind of your first division winning campaign. Back 2012, you had a whole host of ex-Livingston players in amongst it, and all guys that had started their careers with us, and he's ended up romping the league. So who knows what we could have done if we kept them all together.
I know. I think that's interesting there. Obviously, Derek's a legend up here, especially, you know, for what he did for the club as a manager, you know, for the Scottish Cup run, the promotion, the first top 6 push, you know. I think some fans were even calling for him to come back. I think he has said that he feels like there's unfinished business at County. So for some fans who were not happy with the result and on Saturday, and maybe some performances in the league position as a whole as well, you know, they're calling for Derekas to come back and things like that. But Gary Miller there, Gary was great for us, and you said it there, the first division winning campaign, and then I think it was that summer he then got his move to St Johnstone, and then was there for a number of years as well, and he was great for us too. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's just some players fit at some clubs, some don't. It depends when you get them in the career, all sorts. So
one of the other duds I thought of that had a number of appearances for Ross County, one of the many players that has played for both Ross County and Inverness over the years. It seems like the friendliest rivalry ever. They just crossed the Keswick Bridge. But Stuart Golobeck, but he only played like 10 games for us in the first division. And again, it wasn't a very good team, but I just remember him being absolutely terrible for us in those 10 games.
Yeah, I mean, you said it there. It's quite an interesting rivalry. I'll put kind of quotes up there because I think back in the early to mid 2000s it tended to be a lot of Ross County players that were perhaps the better players of that season. Cali would cherry pick them over the summer as they were the Premiership team. They'd be progressing a bit faster than us, but then as things kind of changed the other way, it was almost she was on the other foot. We started to then cherry pick them from Cali, whereas that's kind of seems to have stopped now. But yeah, I forgot Golobeck was another one. So
the other one I thought of that crossed the divide between the two clubs was Cole Donaldson, who started with us. He got a mention as the dud in the Dundee United one preview we did last week. But Ross, you've obviously started the podcast, The County Corner. You recently released your first episode as well. Had a really good guest on, Don Cowie, for that one as well. For anyone who fancies tuning into it, where can they find you?
So we are on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, and we're on Google Podcasts. It's been really good. All the feedback's been good, and it was really fun to get the first episode out there. It's out in 2 parts now. So part 2 is out. It came out on Sunday, which is good. So poor Don had to sit and talk to me for 2 hours. So I don't know how he felt when he got home, but it was great. So, so we'll be kind of putting out more episodes like that with current squad members, former squad members, things like that, and the usual kind of fan forum kind of style things as well. So no, it's been really good.
Well, Ross, thank you so much for coming on. As I kind of say to most guests, I obviously don't wish you the best of luck for your next game, but I do hope you've managed to stay in the league next season.
Cheers, Euan. Thank you. I hope so too. And all the best apart from on week on Saturday.
That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week in and week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback, so either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram.
As Angus said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Search Talk Livi to find us, and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode that we've done over the last few years. That's it for this week. Thanks again to all our listeners for tuning in. The next episode will be in 2 weeks, so let's hope for another great 2 weeks following the Lothians' finest football team, and we'll be back talking about the Ross County and hopefully a title win for the ladies' team.
Livingston, oh Livingston, into the